welcome back to the Everyday Innovation Podcast. I am so thrilled to be back after a little bit of a hiatus, but I am pleased to introduce you to Imed Djabi, who is a multi-passionate solopreneur who's gone from web and branding design through to this whole new creator persona. He has a YouTube channel, he has a newsletter, he has a lot of content online that you can check out. It's all under the passion intersect. Welcome. I'm so excited to have you here, fellow multi-passionate. I want to ask you a couple questions to warm up. Does that work for you?
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much for the warm intro. You couldn't do it better. It was amazing. Thank you so much.
Of course, yes. So you're basically the first guest of the season. So you're going to be kind of my little experimenter here as we try out some questions that I'm probably going to ask everyone. You'll see what they are. There's some nuances to them. But this is just to have fun, get us warmed up, and maybe open up a line of conversation we wouldn't have necessarily had. So the first thing I like to ask, especially to people who are multi-passionate, is there something you're reading or something you're learning about right now that you'd like to share? I know for myself, sometimes I go through periods of reading a lot of books or taking a course. Is there something that you're diving into right now?
Yeah, that's funny because I didn't read a book for 4 months now. Like the last book that I read was in January, and it was because I was cluttered with so many things, and I had to put them into writing, and that's why started the newsletter, YouTubes, and so on to get it out. And I'm slowly reintroducing books, and I'm gonna try a new concept, which is reading multiple books at the same time, just to pick up a concept from a book and then get ideas, connect the dots between other books instead of picking a book, reading from start to finish, being forced to read, and so on. So yeah, I took a small pause. I'm coming back slowly. I don't know yet which book I'm gonna pick. I'll take some recommendation at the end. But
Oh
other than
yeah,
that,
totally.
yeah.
So if anybody from the audience wants to chime in and share some books with us or something to put on our list, that would be awesome. But I love that you're doing kind of the multiple at a time. I do the same. Just because just like you, I love trying to connect some of these dots between things that maybe are kind of unrelated. And sometimes that synergy of having a few things that I'm learning at once ends up coming up with something really cool to talk about, on online or in a newsletter where things that maybe if I were really super focused on one topic or one theme, I wouldn't be able to kind of combine them together and create something new. So I think that's a really awesome practice, especially for you, because, with everything that you're doing, you can bring a really unique perspective to that. So the other thing that I'm going to do, this is kind of fun. So there is a guest that's coming on who actually gifted me these. But there are these fun cards that have questions on them. I kind of went through some of them because a few of them would have taken us on a totally wild turn. But I have some kind of pre-picked out. I don't know which one I'm going to pick yet. So I'm going to pick one for
Awesome.
you. And then you can tell me what it is. So I'm shuffling them. Let's see what this is. Oh, this is actually a pretty cool one. Okay. How are you nourishing your mind, body, and spirit right now?
Oh, it's funny because it's Ramadan and we're in the last day. Yeah, tomorrow is the last day actually. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a special month where we fast from sunrise to sunset,
Hmm.
and more close to God, more close to reading Quran, more spirituality per se,
Yeah.
and keeping those new habits that we built into the month towards other months that are coming after that. So yeah, I think it's Ramadan is the answer for me for now.
Yeah, no, I mean that makes a whole lot of sense because it really is mind, body, and spirit at once. How has that kind of impacted your creativity and how you're thinking right now?
Yeah, good question. I wrote a newsletter about it 3 weeks ago because I wanted to see how people actually, what people think of fasting, and if it does affect creativity and productivity. And I think 92%, I don't recall the exact percentage of the audience in the thread on Twitter, they answered yes, yes, yes. I think fasting is good, fasting is good, fasting is good. And what is fascinating after I did some research, there's different stages that you go through on when you start fasting in Ramadan. and how it affects the body, mind, soul, etc. And the first 2 days are the more difficult. You have to adapt, and your metabolism start to shift,
Right.
and it was super difficult. Like you have headaches, you can't really focus. So like just taking it easy. But after like second week per se, I feel like really productive. My creativity through the roof. You have more focus. You don't have to worry what you have to eat. You don't have to worry
Mhm.
about like your tea. You don't have to worry about drinking, whatever that might be. So it's like go outside, walk, come back, work, gym, work. It gets pretty easy to go through the day.
Yeah, it's kind of like with creativity too. You start to have some of these really interesting constraints to play within and create your routine around and kind of design your life around the particular situation. I'm sure it helps a lot with like resilience too and building that.
Hmm. Definitely, definitely plays a lot with. I mean, it's not the first time, but I'd say it's the first time for me doing it alongside content creation. So that's first experimentation for me. When I was doing it before, it was like more with a physical aspect because I was always playing basketball like for three,
Mhm.
4 hours per day, uh, and I was doing crazy things. Like I was fasting, but still I play for 4 hours without drinking water, without doing anything, and come back home and eat. But I think it plays a huge role for creativity and productivity.
That's awesome. Do you also have like a reflection period kind of like at the end as it concludes, like kind of what you learned during that season? How does that play into like how you approach it?
Definitely. Um, I think the month of Ramadan for me, it's like work is the last thing that like I get my mind to. It's really like, yeah, I work, but going to the mosque, reading Quran,
Yeah.
all of that stuff is far more important than work itself. So yeah, if I have to sacrifice work or sleep to go to the mosque, I'll do that. And that's when I could, I did it, and when I can't, I have to rest. Then I rest. But definitely, work wasn't like a priority for me.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. And I feel like in no matter what you celebrate, no matter anything in your life, there's always seasons, right? Like as a creator, as a business owner, there's times where you're kind of creating a lot more. There's times where there's more rest. There's times where you're focusing a lot more on your family. There's times where, you have to kind of be able to, we'll get into this, like design your life in a way that you can honor all of that and not just put all of your kind of eggs into one basket. And I think with being multi-passionate, what's cool about that is you've kind of already owned that you're multi-dimensional. So that means you may be multi-passionate in your business, but you're also multi-passionate in life. So you have other things that are priorities. And it's not just, I think sometimes when there's a lot of expertise and niche, I feel like sometimes we start to build a persona around that. And it becomes hard to let other things in or let other things kind of um, you know, color the water, right? Like in your creativity. So that's actually such a beautiful way to like to start this conversation out because it's showing already kind of just the depth of what you're doing. So your background is in brand and web design and you're still doing a lot of that, correct?
Yeah, correct, correct,
Yeah. So and you're doing you're trying to create that more for like not just freelancing but also doing like digital products as well, right?
correct. I have my freelance business, and when I was only doing that, it started to get super consuming
Mhm.
mentally and physically per se. Because yeah, like sending cold emails, having to prove my value to clients, and so on, instead of focusing on building genuine relationship with other people like copywriter, photographers, whatever that might be, that can bring clients in the future. Because of the genuine relationship that I built. And I felt like, yeah, I purchased program coaching that didn't help me much. I wasn't successful for a long time before making a shift with self-reflection,
Mhm.
understanding that those things that I was told to do don't work with me because I'm a multi-passionate. And I didn't understand for a long time why it wasn't working for me, because yeah, you have to niche down, so on, so forth. But when you have other thing in your mind that you cannot like control, I cannot control what thoughts that I have. Yeah, it the content that you're consuming plays a role, but I always have like I felt like I need something more. I need something more. I need something more until a point where I was really fed up and I tried to find like some solution. So I tried to build like an appointment agency kind of thing. Didn't work
Mhm.
out well as well because I felt again, this is not for me. I switched from wanted to serve e-commerce brands to um, beauty salons, medical spas, like local businesses per se. And
Yeah.
then yeah, that's how I got my kind of first clients, really big clients per se. And up until this point, I still send cold emails, but I feel like there's more connection now, and I have more referrals, etc., etc. But that's only one part of me now because I have content creation, and
Right.
I feel more fulfilled. And now when I think back of it, if I still was only doing freelancing, I want to be fulfilled because that wasn't the only thing that I wanted to do.
Right. And sometimes having these multiple spaces where we can create for ourselves, create for a community, create for a client, they can kind of all work together and kind of up the creativity in all those spaces as opposed to just only picking one, right? I know like personally, I've kind of had a non-linear journey, and in being multi-passionate, one of the things that's tough is really um, you're hearing a lot of noise about having to choose one thing. And yes, it is going to always be more efficient, quote unquote, if you're going to go after one, um, you know, focus on this one project or focus only on this one kind of channel. But for me personally, what I noticed is I would burn out so quickly doing that that I actually
Mm,
was getting behind. I was better off almost being very mindful of my systems as a multi passionate person, and doing multiple things at once, being, obviously not putting anything that was going to start to drain me or affect other pieces, but things that would kind of complement one another. And then making sure that I'm not wasting a lot of time, like task switching between things as well. So as a multi passionate solopreneur, how have you kind of like designed this new sort of system in adding in the creator piece without feeling like you're kind of like burning yourself out?
I never felt kind of mental burnout. Never. It was more like just a feeling of being stuck. So
Mm,
I could even now I can work for 10 hours, 12 hours, and I won't feel a thing. I can do that. I don't have a problem with it. If I have like kind of structured project that I want to just get ahead with, but uh, I knew that the only burnout that I can have is physical. So that's
right.
the only thing that, yeah, I have to rest, take a nap, whatever it might be. But mentally speaking, never had that problem. And when I wanted to start like the career path, I knew that that's what I wanted to do, because I wanted to talk about my interests. I wanted to meet other multi passionates. And that's why we're here now, That's what's crazy about it. And yeah, I don't regret a thing, even though I wasn't really doing my true calling per se when I was
Right.
only creating content about branding, web design, Shopify, e-commerce, whatever that might be. That was draining, but never to the point where like, you know, I'm burned down to whatever. It was more like fed up.
So then how did a lot of the branding and design kind of feed into this kind of new space of now maybe focusing a bit on like personal branding and then designing kind of like how you were going to approach this creator space and like how you were going into that? How did that kind of like not even transition for you, but maybe kind of set you up for that?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I had the opportunity to have like the skills for making websites and so on. So when I transition into the creator, I come up with this skill stack of branding and web design. So I gave myself like 10 hours to make my new website. I suffered from perfectionism for a long time, especially when I started like freelancing and coming up
Mm.
like into the branding space and so on. Yeah. Just my first website took me like more than 6 months to
Yeah.
finish up. And when I transitioned, there was something that I had to unlearn before going to the career space, which was when you are working with product based businesses, e-commerce brand, whatever that might be, when you are doing the branding, it's not for you, it's for your customer avatar, right? So the
Right.
color, your favorite colors, all of that stuff doesn't matter. It's not for you, it's for your customer. But then for personal branding, like real personal branding, I'm trying to attract people like me. So my thinking was super simple. I like white and black and white. I like this, I
Mhm.
like that. I want to attract people who like that as well. As simple as
Right.
that. So it was super efficient, no overthinking, no back thinking, no whatever that might be. Just did it and went straight into it, you know?
Yeah, and you mentioned that you really like minimalism. Is that like also kind of a value that you implement in like some of your work or the way that you approach life or your home? I'm just curious because
Oh,
I know it's
yes.
sometimes in design, sometimes it shows up in different areas.
Yes. I will like show you my room, but it's a little of a mess right now.
No, no,
I
you don't
have
have to, but I trust you. I trust you.
I have like my bed on the floor, kind of Japanese style.
Yeah.
I have like more than 50 black t-shirt, 50 black white t-shirt as well, and outfit for special occasions. But other than that, super simple, like
Yeah.
minimalist desk, minimalist room, minimalist everything.
Yeah.
It's it plays a huge role, and I learned that from Japan. Like Japanese culture is a huge role for me. It's a big influence, and yeah, that's how I live my life. Actually, it's same concept.
I love that. Is there anything like from the culture, like a specific like tenet or mental model or something that you
Yeah, I can't call it specifically, but when I went to Japan for the first time, and back then I was suffering from perfectionism, right?
yeah.
So I asked myself this question, like, Japan looks perfect, right? It looks super, super perfect, super neat. Everything is clean. Really, everything looks perfect. But then you think if it's like if the person, the people who build those things think like me, it has to be perfect, then those things wouldn't exist, right? And so I changed my approach to just having like high standards as of checklist, and then those high standards define your quote unquote perfection, which, and
Mhm.
at the end of the day, it won't ever be perfect, the audio of this podcast won't ever be perfect. Nothing will be
Of
ever
course.
perfect, you know? So yeah, that's how I like have beating perfectionism and took a lot of inspiration from the Japanese culture, whether it's for minimalist living, finance, whatever that might be, like for pretty much everything, to be honest. And that translated into my design taste.
Yeah. I mean that makes a whole lot of sense. And it kind of feeds back into your personal brand of being able to, like you said, like attract people who have those same values or have very similar interests. It's things that you can talk about on socials or in communities where you can create those connection points with people. And yeah, I mean, was it as you kind of started to become like being more of like the creator space, did you feel like some of that perfectionism like kind of cropping back up? Were you feeling like, at times overthinking like your personal brand? Because I know sometimes that can be tough for people who have worked for maybe clients before. Like,
Good question. To be honest, no. As of challenges, because I really approached Twitter as a game,
mm,
and I really didn't have any expectations. In my
yeah,
mind, I was going to tweet for at least a year into a void. Like nobody will see me, nobody will find me,
right,
nobody will, So I didn't have expectations. So when I started creating content, I knew for a fact that even though like there's no people who will find me, I don't care. And if they find me, they don't
right,
like it, I don't care as well. So I was really in the mindset of I don't care about anything. But after, it resonated with people, that changed some perspective for me in a way that
yeah,
I will care for people who care. And for people who are like kind of one step, two step behind me, there's a lot
Yeah.
of multi-passionate now. I'm like in a 500 followers mark, and they're like how did you do it? You know, how did you approach your content creation game? And that made me wanted to go back and see my previous tweets. You know, and you see, there's a lot of people who quit after 2 months. You know, tweeting for 2 months and nobody sees
Yeah.
them, but then what? You know, but well, one tweet away from getting those followers finding out about you. And
Right.
that's why I told myself that I will do that for at least a year. And I had like, even though 5 years mark goal in my mind. So I wasn't going to quit for a bit. Like, I was there for a long time before even like starting, you know?
And that's like such a great point in that a lot of people want the result. And really, it's more about the journey. You have to love the journey, even when there's no feedback, even when there is a hard day, like you're able to. I feel like sometimes with multi-passionates, consistency is such a weird word because sometimes it comes off as like a little bit boxed in because what does even consistency mean for different people, right? But there's a consistency and commitment. So you have that consistency and commitment that you were going to show up no matter what. If, 100 people commented or if no one saw it and you had to retweet it a couple of times to see if it would maybe show up on somebody's feed. Um, so that is so inspiring in the sense of like, I think that some of the most successful people in kind of the creator space also had that mindset. And they were like, I just want to create for the sake of creating. I want to create for the sake of connection with a potential community. I want to find not just people to network with or like make some sales, but I want to make some friends. I want to make, you know, I want to have people that I can lean on for life, even if these are not people that I can quote unquote monetize like an audience, right? It's a very
Yeah.
different game now. So you went into Twitter. Did you have the idea of like, I'm going to probably expand this into like some long form content, or did you start on Twitter and start to see some patterns and then you decided, okay, I'm going to do a newsletter. I'm going to do, the YouTube. I know the podcast is the newest. So how did you go about that process of going kind of from that short form to long form?
So yeah, I consumed a lot of Dan School content, and
Yeah.
I was super inspired by how he was doing it, and I wanted to attract people who are like me in a way. Like, I love reading long form newsletters.
Mm-hmm.
I love watching long form videos on YouTube, and
Yeah.
so I just wanted to replicate that in a sense with my own perspective. And I wanted, before starting anything, I said to myself, I wanted to come up with a roadmap and just like to see what that looks like, for 5 years. So I did that. That was my first issue. And that, because of that first newsletter, actually, a lot of people reached out to me, oh, I love how you laid out your goals. You're inspiring me and so on. I was super surprised. But I intended from the beginning to do those long form content because I will use them for short form content, like for
Right.
tweets, threads, whatever that might be. And like for threads, I did maybe 10 in 3 months. I really
Mhm.
didn't care about the generic advices like niche down, write three tweets per day. I really didn't give a thing about that. So, yeah, generally speaking, I started with a newsletter, translated it into tweets, and after, I already had the YouTube idea in mind, but I never knew when I will start it. So I just gave myself a deadline, and then I started. And the podcast came with the YouTube idea.
Yeah, because there's so many efficiencies that you can create now. That's what I love about long form content. I like consuming it too. Like even I don't send out newsletters as often, but they're longer curations of like lots and lots of resources, some writing, and it's kind of a mix. I would say a hodgepodge of things. I even have playlists in it as well. So it's kind of like, something to it's kind of a standalone, more evergreen kind of piece that you can return to about like a specific subject or around a certain concept. So I kind of got that from I was part of a community. I'm still a part of the community. It's called Trends VC. There's a lot of people who are actually like creators or indie. Like I'm also in kind of the indie hacker community because I was a
Mm,
coder. That
Oh, amazing.
I came from I came from marketing background in the entertainment industry, and, then I decided to go to, I wanted to, like, kind of learn design on my own. I did some things, here and there. I knew that I wanted to get more into tech, but I was doing a lot of no code stuff. Then I decided to kinda graduate, go to, like, UCLA, like, the boot camp, like, once I moved out here, and I was like, "I need to, like, get out of my usual stuff. I'm just gonna try it. Let me see what I can take from this." And I really ended up loving software engineering, but then after some time, it was like way too much time for one thing. And then with no code coming up, I was like, I actually love more of like the architecture of an app or the architecture of like a venture or an experience as opposed to like sitting there and coding for hours. Like I can draw out the whole, like all the logic of it. I don't necessarily want to sit there and like execute all the time. So I moved from that, and then it's funny because of the multi-passionate part, you start picking up all these people. So I have a lot of like people in marketing, like and like personal branding and design, and then I have some of the creatives from back in the day, and then I also have like a lot of I would call them like entrepreneur minded techies, right? So I
Mm.
love like having this circle of people who have these different perspectives, but they're all kind of starting to converge, right? Especially like on Twitter, right? There's like
Yeah,
this amazing group of people who want to be creators in their own right, because creator can kind of be like content, it can be creating like apps or templates or other types of digital products, all these different types of new models of business that you can do as a solopreneur.
definitely. Yeah, actually, we have a very similar background. Even me, I studied coding. 13 years old, I was like, yeah, I want to. I learned how to code a WordPress theme from scratch with
Yeah.
French tutorials. And that was like now it's 12 years ago. Can you imagine? It's crazy.
I know when you're like you kind of go through all that and you're looking back on
Dreamweaver.
and like how much has changed too. Like even in like the last
Yes.
like 4 or 5 years, I mean, the entire kind of landscape has changed. It's actually really, really good for the multi-passionate. The tech is really caught up to people wanting to do multiple things, you know?
I noticed that like multi passionates have like a quick difficulty to not understand which side of the brains they should lean into and if they can use both of it together. That's the question that I was always asking myself because I love to draw. I love drawing things, anime, whatever that might be. And after I learned coding, but after like I want to still design. How can I do that?
Right.
And there wasn't like a straight map for multi passion. You either have to be a coder or a designer. You cannot be both. But now it's a different thing, especially with no code. But even then, when there wasn't no code, I was able to design my own website and code my own website.
Right. Okay, so you mentioned that, and what's so funny is I always tell people, they're like, "Are you right brained or left brained?" And I'm like, "No, I'm the corpus callosum. I'm the part that connects the two." Like, I literally feel that probably it's same with you too, especially with multi passionates, and that's why I love the name Passionate Intersect too. Which I know you may or may not like have like part of this is like part of the thinking behind it, but I just love that space where that kind of blends together. It's that kind of liminal space between like right brain and left brain. I feel like that's where I kind of connect a lot of my communities is because I truly do feel like I embody and sit on that line. And I think you do too. And what happens is you start pulling in people who want to be maybe a little bit more creative, people who want to be a little bit more technical and or strategic, whatever that might be. And I just don't really believe that people are one or the other. I think there's like a spectrum of things. So I feel like I sit very much in the center. So I think there's a really beautiful thing for people like us to kind of pull in and bring people some value kind of from either side and show how to actually live and think with both as opposed to even maybe seasonally doing one or the other at different parts of life. I feel like design does kind of lean toward that science and art, so it probably was a really great space for you to kind of like continue to develop that.
I'm
That's it.
super intrigued by that, and I was intrigued about that particular topic, especially because I play basketball and I wanted to understand. like how people get better at like shooting with the right hand and the left hand and being
Mm,
good at both of them. I wanted to do that. And so like
so cool.
for 2 months, 3 months, I was only working out with my left. That was it. I wanted to feel the feeling. How how is it to be good with both hands? And to the point where my left hand became better than my right hand with like driving to the hoop. Anyway,
Yeah.
that because when you use your right hand, then it's your left brain that is working, and when you are
Right.
using your left hand, it's your right brain that is working. So it was fascinating for me that when I play basketball and I shift from my right to left, then and you are as good as the right, then your brain had become better, and so technically you're smarter, in a way.
Yeah. You're really kind of training both of those sides. And again, this is where a space like people who are, I feel, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but people like us who maybe are pushed back against kind of the niche sort of narrative, not necessarily there. I think it does work for some people and a lot of experts and a lot of people who are meant to like have that ultra deep like knowledge in a specific space, or they have a very unique specific story to tell. um I think, for us as multi-passionates, anyway, it's a little bit different. But anyway, but so we're kind of like a little bit, yeah, we're kind of anti-niche. So it's interesting to kind of pull in, what you were saying, like the strengthening of different parts and, kind of the dangers of maybe over niching somewhere because maybe you're having some blind spots, in an area. Where maybe you could just kind of expand like your awareness a bit, even if you are like an expert. So it's really cool that you were talking about sort of this roadmap you laid out because one of the big things in all of these spaces is kind of the build in public, or I like to say innovate in public because buildings, sometimes can be seasonal, right?
Hmm.
So, I wanted to kind of speak to like one kind of you sharing that roadmap. Was there like some like I'm sure there's a lot of vulnerability there because you're saying like, look at this. I haven't even done it yet. This may change, you know, kind of what do you think? I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, maybe share a few points from that. And then also just like your view of kind of innovating and building in public.
Yeah, I love numbers, and yeah, I was triggered by a tweet from Justin Welsh on LinkedIn. Like,
Yeah.
what does 100K looks like month by month with product by
Yep.
product and so on. So I took this exact framework per se, and I implemented it into like how does that will look like with digital products and my actual services. And I've seen like other web designer, brand designer with kind of a framework intensives and how you can like reach 20K, 30K, whatever that might be with a particular set of clients. I had a fixed mindset before regarding like pricing, high
Mm,
tickets mentality, and that's why I was stuck for a long time, trying to reach a particular amount of money because only wanted to work with high tickets clients, But that's subjective at the end of the day. And for me,
right.
it was $8,000, $10,000, whatever that might be. But
Right.
I was stuck because for people to pay you that amount of money, trust is key factor. And if
Yes.
you don't have genuine relationship with other people that can recommend you, then how the hell can they gonna pay you $10,000, right? So I can say I was delusional per se, and
No, not delusion. You know what? There is a and then I'm gonna go out on a limb here and just say that there has been a bit of I would just say a bubble in like personal services. I would say also for like from the coaching sphere, it was something that was kind of unregulated. And there's nothing to say. Most of the people that have been on this podcast so far are in the coaching space. And it's not to say anything about that. I think it's a beautiful space and it's needed. It's a community service back to one another. But I do think because it was kind of unregulated, there was a lot of variability in what was value and how much you should pay for it. And I think it started to bleed into other types of services, like
mm,
your worth or your value is not enough if you're not charging enough. When really that's maybe not the most sustainable way to, it might actually be tougher, like you were saying, for a lot of people to put that so much effort and so much um, trust also as a designer that you will find that client and you're going to connect, not only just find them, but connect with them and be able to have a good relationship because you can get trapped by something like that too. More people are getting a little bit more feedback probably would have like solved that. But yeah, that's not just you. That's been like, I think everyone. I even for myself looking, I think there was a certain point where I was wanting to offer more services that she even like want to do. I'm like, that's not even something that I want to do, but I felt like I had to because a lot of people were offering these
Mm,
types of things and it was just kind of permeating the market, especially like creator market. I think there was a lot of that too. So
yeah.
as you're getting this inspiration, right? From that, you're breaking down the numbers. You're looking at now, okay, so what is more realistic from the freelancing piece, from the digital products piece, and now the creator piece. So, how did you kind of factor in one versus the other to kind of balance not only like, okay, what's going to be the best for Millie, but also like what's the best for like my mind and my creative process? Like, how did you kind of apportion that in a way?
Yeah, so I started with the first point, like I decorticated into like three phases, and each has milestones, and so like instead of looking up for 10,000 clients, whatever that might be, I
Yeah.
decided that I wanted to uh, charge $3,000, $4,000 instead of $10,000, and instead find four clients that will pay me $4,000. That $12,000, right?
Right.
And with the intensive model, I can book them one after the other in the same week. Which like the intensive models is like you book with me, for example, web design, and
Right.
then we will work together from 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 p.m.
Yes.
Yes, and yeah, so I was like, yeah, if I have this model, like working only with three clients per week, making X amount of money, and then I have 3 weeks left, whether I will love to work more or I work on my content creation side of business. So how that's how I started to see it. But now, like to this point, I might change my approach because I'm like, if I have the opportunity, for example, to capitalize on my digital products, then I will just do less freelance work at the end of the day because I wanted to focus more on the quality of my digital products, and that's how I start to see it because I have so many ideas that came to my mind because I spoke with so many people on Twitter, more than
Right.
40 people, and hearing their stories, their struggles, whatever that might be. And, ideas start to float in, and reaching the million is not that complicated, to be honest, now when I see it like in a 5 years, 6 years uh, roadmap per se.
Right. And the thing is, I think what a lot of us have, and I mean, I'm speaking kind of in generalities. I'm not going to say like that necessarily you did at certain points or whatever. But a lot of creators, a lot of entrepreneurs have a bit of, especially when you're talking big numbers, especially if you've been in the creative field, there is sort of that imposter syndrome of, oh, that just seems big. And then you're not actually sitting and saying, no, let me just break it down. Let me break it down into smaller chunks. And that's something, I learned from software development. It taught
Mm,
me how to really look at the bigger picture and then break it down into tiny micro tasks or micro steps, right? Because computers, I know now with AI, there are lots, they're getting smarter and smarter. But truly, like when you're coding, you have to tell the computer everything. Like, you can't just say, like, "Make a sandwich." It's like, you gotta, like, take the knife, spread it one way, spread it like, that's the logic if you're, like, coding, right? So, when you get to that, you start to say, "Look, anything can be broken down," right?
yes.
And why can't I just have a thought experiment of doing that? I think a lot of people talk themselves out of, just breaking that down and just having at least the thought experiment, sit down and write it down how you would get to a million. And then I'm sure over time, like you're going to have to innovate and see depending on how each of these pieces of the business is
Hmm.
going because they can take over. Like there could be something where you get sponsorship for your newsletter, sponsorship for the
Yes.
podcast. And then, oh, that replaces, okay, I was going to make another digital product, but you know what? I really want to focus here right now. And that's the beauty is nothing is set in stone. We're able to
Mm.
continue to share. So what are you doing to like I know you're very transparent. how do you like kind of share your wins and your, you know, even like just like your failures or the things that you're having trouble with like in a public way? Um, so that like, what would you, what kind of advice would you give to people who are like just starting out wanting to be a little bit more transparent, but maybe are kind of still stuck in that like perfectionistic mindset, or, maybe they're worried about their personal brand or something?
I struggled a long time with consistency per se. Yeah, I started with
Yeah.
LinkedIn after I stopped and after come back. YouTube as well. I had a previous YouTube channel doing branding, UI UX design stuff, and again wasn't fulfilling, so just stopped.
Yeah.
And there's like this kind of, I don't know, facts or whatever it might be, when you tell your goals publicly, then it's the same as what, I forgot exactly what is it, but I mean, it releases the same dopamine as doing them, so you want to achieve them
Right.
all.
Yes. Yes. So you're sharing things, but then you've kind of put it out there and then you're not actually executing on it because you've already
Yeah.
given yourself, it's like the you've gotten the pre-reward, right? You're not getting the reward once you're completing it. You're getting the reward because you're doing something maybe that seems scary by sharing it, right? But then at the same time, you're not actually like doing the work to complete it. So it can like actually cause almost like an opposite effect
Hmm.
if it's not completed or you're not being consistent, or I totally
But
get it.
yeah, that's the, why I didn't like really listen to that, because I use my roadmap as a accountability calendar per se. Even if I
Yeah.
didn't achieve that milestone now, I don't care, because it's a 5-year plan at the end of the day. And a
Right.
lot of people actually reached out and said, "Oh, that seems so achievable." Like, when I saw 1 million, I was like, "Oh, too ambitious, whatever that might be." But after, yeah, when you read, "Oh, that's only 40K," and when you, for example, a digital product for $80, that would be like a website theme that I'm gonna sell. I spoke to you about it.
Yeah.
Uh, $80, 6 sales per day. That's 2% from 300 visitors.
Yeah.
Uh, I think, if the math are correct, and that's $14,000 per month. And even like for $14,000 per month is very very much for me. Like, that's too much even. I'm really content with $2,000. $2,000 is only 20 sales per month.
Right.
That's practically
And
nothing.
that's actually a beautiful thing, kind of tying back in the minimalism is you can also look at when you're creating something and saying, okay, what is ideal? And what is maybe like a very realistic, like if I came from an analysis standpoint, people will be like, That's incredibly reasonable, right?" Yes, if something bad happens, whatever. If something great happens, you can be like, where's that kind of midpoint? And then where's like kind of that like minimum threshold where I'm like, this is helping me, this is enough, but it's still driving me to do it because it's better than nothing, right? There's something that's there that's getting you that rent payment that, I think a lot of creators, indie hackers, they're coming up with these products and it's either they're thinking at the moon piece or they're kind of like so freaked out by everything that they just are kind of not even really monetizing it. They're just like putting it out there. And there's a beauty in kind of having that like those things that are just supporting you, but then them becoming something that is, like, huge, or then becoming something that was helpful for a while, and then maybe it's not something you wanna do anymore. Because there may be some aspect of it that, like, the world changes, the context changes, people may want something or other, maybe people want more templates in the future, maybe people want less templates, they want more done for you stuff, so you just, like, you can only go with your best guess and utilize the things that you love and that you're good at, and then when you're accountable with it with, like, your community, you're saying, "Look, the world's changing. Look, I'm changing. Look at this." And then you get to bring them along on that journey as opposed to, like, let me you know, like, there's a lot of challenges that are and they're fine, but they're all, like, in 30 days or 100 days, which is great, but that's so short. It's great to start something, but it's not something that you should expect, like, some crazy result from. It should be, like, starting the process for you, you know? But yeah, anyway, I just wanted to say that like I think that's really awesome. And so, you know, what types of things are you sharing kind of like, how are you trying to build out that creator persona and like your personal brand? Like who do you want to be known as? I
Mm,
know that's maybe a very loaded question, but I'm curious because the thing is, I think sometimes we have to speak these things into existence, right? Like as you kind of
definitely.
start to build. Um, who do you want to continue to build to be like over these 5 years?
um, multi-passionate. I think that's no many people have like associated that word with themselves on Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram, whatever that might be. When I looked it up on Google, there isn't much of articles about it. I've found some successful entrepreneurs, multi-passionate entrepreneurs, multi-millionaires, but there was step to it, you know. So and they don't advertise themselves as multi-passionate, but they
Right.
use some terms, you know. I'm a podcaster, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a blogger, I'm a mom, I'm this, I'm that,
Right.
and that's multi-passionate, right? You cannot. That's how you describe yourself. Like you cannot like just say I'm doing X or Y or Z.
Right. Right.
I'm doing all of those things. I'm all of those things. I cannot just box myself, put
Right.
myself in a box. So to answer this question, I don't have like multi passion is the word for it, but I mean I don't know yet. Like I don't know to be honest. From
Yeah.
the
I mean,
audience that
that's okay. Honestly, I was sort of asking just because I think probably for a lot of multi-passionates, like, why would you necessarily know? Because you're kind of
mm,
open to the different possibilities. Like, I think we're both like in different ways trying to build a model possibly for other people to follow who are like us.
hmm
And that want to be able to like not be looked down on as like the generalist or the, you know what I'm saying? Or
yes.
the person who maybe seems scattered. Like it's giving some strategy to like pulling that into your personal brand, pulling that into like your business model, like how like you're pulling it into your business model of how you're going to make 1 million as a solopreneur. Like I'm starting to build a venture studio, which basically is being a portfolio entrepreneur, starting as a solo person and then building a team around. So it's really, again, we're portfolio entrepreneurs. That's what it ends up being. All these people end up becoming portfolio entrepreneurs, but they're probably known for one thing, right? But a
mm,
lot of them, like, I mean, think of a lot of the celebrity brands. They have so many things going on, and a lot of them are actually involved in their process. So it's not, yes, it's kind of like a creator model. It's kind of like a multi-brand like model, but I do think you can start from our level, right? And like build that up, especially now. So I think we're doing, some interesting work in kind of defining and testing and trying some things out, hopefully, so that people can do it a little bit more easily in the future. Cause I think it is kind of the season, especially with tech, how it's progressing, being able to assist us in things now. We're getting to the point where you can actually be multi-passion and do some stuff because you don't have as much of the execution burden on yourself.
definitely. I mean, like, I think there's still a lot of people who end up in the wrong spectrum of social media where there are those advices, generic advices that you have to niche down, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, even like with so few followers, like 500 is a lot, but I mean, compared to others who receive like countless DMs and so on. But I receive so many DMs, which is like really crazy to me, fascinating, with people saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, because they thought that it wasn't possible to come up to Twitter and talk about whatever the hell you want, you know, about your
Right.
multiple interests and so on, because they were wired or programmed into thinking that isn't going to work for you, you know, until
Right.
someone do it, right? It's always impossible until someone do it or
Until
you
it's
do it.
done. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly, that's truly kind of how we innovate, how we do new things is you just kind of have to just do it and design it. So how do you approach, because I know you mentioned life design and I love venture design and life design. That's like a huge like part of like my value system, things that I really, really enjoy talking about. I know you're kind of we've talked a lot about it kind of indirectly. But how did you get into, because I know it's like one of your like bigger pieces that you're like sharing, even like in your like banners and stuff, you have like life design. So what is your kind of view of what life design is? Is that something that you've had to kind of develop as a multi-passionate? Is it something that is just like your values embodied? Like, like, how do you see life design showing up in your world?
Yeah. So to be honest, I didn't even know this term until like maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I I had kind of a sports betting consultancy before I was doing sports betting.
Yeah.
Different whole world. Where I was like waking up, going to the gym after playing basketball. Like I was sleeping on the gym, basketball, gym, pool, sauna, jacuzzi,
Yeah.
going there at 8 a.m., going out at 4 p.m., and then go eat, make my bed. The day is done. So it
Yeah.
was kind of my lifestyle. And after traveling, got to travel to more than 20 countries, I think. I don't recall per se. I don't want to exaggerate, but I've been to a lot of countries. I've experienced a lot of cultures, different cultures. I love more countries than the others. But I mean, that was though, like, I had the concept but not the word to associate it with it. And
Yes. Yeah.
when I started like my business, um I stopped everything because of religious purposes, related to sports betting, but I was
Yeah.
making a lot of money. Then when I started web design, freelancing, etc., I wasn't making that kind of money anymore, and it was difficult to navigate because I had a lifestyle. And then now I found myself working that many hours. I became obsessed. I wanted to like rejuvenate how I was living before, but without the sports betting part of things, which was my stream of income. So I was living on my savings per se
Right.
until first clients build up, etc., etc. And now I'm in the point where, yeah, I have savings, I have income, but it's not sustainable. It's not like recurring income, stable income, but I'm still good. And with the personal branding thing, I mean, it's like you have freedom in front of your eyes, but you have two choices now. Either you take it or you let it slip in front of you. And I
Right.
won't let it slip in front of me.
Yeah, I totally understand. And then also coming, you're coming from also a background and a lifestyle where um you know that's also bringing so much like value into this like new space, and like there's like an identity shift I'm sure that's happened for you
Mm,
too, like kind of having that full lifestyle and then completely kind of changing it up. So like in a way, like you really had to kind of design this new lifestyle and space for yourself. It's not even just the identity aspect of it, it's just like the daily routines, the daily habits, like that you end up choosing, right? You end up choosing these things because you kind of like choose your destiny, right? Choose your game, choose your player, right? So you really kind of are an example of, of doing that. And that's also, I mean, what's great about being multi-passionate is you're able to tell kind of these stories, and you can pull on draw on these things, especially if you're like advising anybody else or mentoring or just showing up and being an example. Like what I loved about what you said, but with like the life design is you didn't have a word for it yet. And I feel like there's so many things that I've had to discover over the last few years where there wasn't a word for that yet. Like
mhm,
there's some things I'm working on where there's just really not a lot of words for it yet. And that's really exciting, like especially in this kind of multi-passionate space, like things that you call yourself, things that you call the things that you're working on, like strategies behind things
mm,
that just don't really exist yet because they haven't really been allowed. Or even if they have been, it seemed like a fluke, right? That somebody was able to do that, or maybe they just had a lot of money and they were able to just kind of, figure that out or do that, or it wasn't like there was not really a lot of strategy behind it, which is completely unfair because there are a lot of people who have accomplished that, but probably they just felt like I just did the thing and I didn't really put any sort of words to it other than I just lived my life, right? Um, so, I mean, I thought that was really cool that you said that there was a term for it, because there were some things where I would search like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "Oh, I could, like, call myself that in this season," right? Like, or that makes sense for me, even though, like, I've never necessarily heard that before, but that's what's describing kind of where I am right now, and, like, the multi-passionate nature, or the, even just, again, calling yourself a multi-passionate, not as common. Maybe one more a couple more little questions for you. Um, what are some things that you would suggest to somebody who is like on the beginning of this journey? Um, you know, that's looking other than just like subscribing to your newsletter and your and your podcast to see what you're up
I
to.
know.
Like,
Yeah.
what would you suggest? What would be like the biggest thing you would suggest to somebody who's like, "Hey, I'm making a change. I want to add this, side hustle, right? This kind of side hustle in my life, not just for money, but because I love it. How should I go? What would you advise them to potentially think about doing from kind of your perspective?"
Yeah, yeah. There's there's a lot of generic advice, and at some point you cannot know what is generic advice until you see it many, 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 many times. So
Right,
me now saying that, for example, no niching down is the way to go, and it's the first time that you're hearing that, then it's not generic up until the point where you hear it again 100 times. So now it
right,
becomes generic again. So it's like what is everyone saying now? And me personally, I want to go against the grain, but not like in a way to reinvent the wheel, but
yeah,
more as just following your guts. If you are doing something and it's not feeling right to you, then it's not.
yeah,
And that was what I was feeling when I was creating content, like only for Shopify branding, whatever that might be. I wasn't feeling it wasn't feeling right with me, and sending cold DMs, pretending to care for products of someone just to have to work with them. It wasn't working well for me. And those are kind of advice that I received too, land clients per se, add them, engage with them, wait 6 months and have to come back to them. Like, what the hell? I don't have, I don't need to have to need to do that for getting clients. So to answer the question in one sentence, it's really to listen to your gut per se. It feels like it's so simple to say, but not that easy to do. But it's how I did it. I just like I didn't want to listen to general advice anymore. I wanted to do it my way, and my way was just speaking about whatever the hell I wanted. So yeah.
me even telling you to give advice. Like, I love that. Like, it's like there's so much generic advice out there that like just telling someone to give advice is kind of generic as well. But I was hoping that there would be something. I love the nugget that kind of like you gave of just following your gut and knowing what kind of resonates with
In
you.
my, the first thing that came to my mind is like creating,
Yeah.
creating. So,
Creating. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
That
that's
what
what it
came to my
is.
mind.
It really is like you're creating your life, you're creating your work, you're creating every moment of your life, right? Like you're a co-creator in your whatever your beliefs are, you're a co-creator in your life.
Yeah,
It's
I
kind of
have a
something
word for
that
it now. Yeah, I came up with a word. I'll call that um, a constant self actualization per se.
oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. See, this is why this is why I like asking this question because I always get such really cool and unique answers. Thank you so much. And then the last thing I want to add is because we have that kind of like Q&A, I'll put the book thing in there. But do you have anything that you would want to get as like feedback? So let's say on Spotify or if you're on YouTube or if you just want to like send us a DM, like what is something um, that you want to put out there that you want to hear from other people? How would you like them to respond to this? Is there something you have a question about? Is there something you want to put out into the world that you're curious about kind of from the greater community?
It's kind of interesting for multi-passionate to think of those questions because, again, there's no right or wrong, right? But
Right.
yes, okay. So if I understood the question is, what will I ask the community that are listening to us
Yeah,
when?
let's say there was that response there and you were just to post a question like you would on Twitter, right? Like if you had just like a open question after like just having this chat, is there something like a piece of it that you're curious about someone having a particular reaction or is there something like how they think about something that I can
Yeah. So yeah, my question will be, if you think you have multiple passion, what is stopping you from pursuing them? That's the
I
question
love
that I
that's
always ask
perfect. That's
people.
perfect. Yeah. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who want to respond, I'm sure, to some of this too in one space or another, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's
Hmm.
on Spotify or YouTube or whatever. I want to give them that prompt and not just be like, tell me what you thought of the episode. I want to
So
say like,
I can do
give
that
us
for you.
something directly from you, something that helps you too, that is
That's
mutually
awesome.
valuable.
So you can add like a question poll, like Q&A.
Yes,
How can you
check
do
it
that?
out. I actually switched, I wanted to do the video podcast, so I did switch to Spotify for podcasters, but they have polls that you can add. You can add a Q&A if you log
Awesome.
in. It's really cool. So I saw the Q&A and I was like, "Oh, interesting. Let's see what we can do there." And then also it's just great for YouTube. So, so people can feel like if they want to comment, it's not just commenting to say, "Great job." It's comment or,
Mm-hmm,
trolling me. Just kidding. They can just,
mm-hmm.
like, comment and actually, like,
Awesome.
respond to something from us, you know?
Yeah, that's an innovation for me. That's something that I just knew about like right now. So I'm gonna do it for
Well,
my next
there you
podcast.
go, and then you can get creative with it, right? That's the
Yes,
amazing thing. That's why I love technology and creativity. I just feel like there's a really cool co-creative process with, like, tech too as creatives. So
that's
that's where that kind of intersect happens again as
good
multi-passionates is, like,
intersection. That's
not
the
fighting
passion
it, like,
intersect.
actually embracing the
I'm
cool
super
stuff, right?
excited. Yeah, I'm super excited to
Yeah.
have you on my podcast. That will be super amazing conversation as
We're
well.
gonna have so
Oh,
much fun, and yeah, so please check out, the Passion Intersect, everything. I'm gonna put stuff in the show notes. There will be, like, a little Notion companion too, which has, kind of some things from Imed that are a little bit extras to get to know him a little bit better that I'm gonna be curating for him. So, check that out. You'll see that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Imed,
thank
for
you.
joining me today. It was a pleasure. I can't wait to, join you on yours. And to all the multi-passionates out there, just do it. Follow us on Twitter at Jordan
Yes.
Savecha, at Imed Djabi, so that we can see what you're up to and follow along on your journey. Thank you so much, Imed.
Thank you so much for hosting.